All right. Just be patient while some people start joining in. I hope the audio is working. Let me just make sure the correct microphone is selected. Testing, testing, testing. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. All right. We have 5. That's good. All right. Can you guys post some of your questions? I have already a whole bunch of questions here. I'm going to go over them. All right. Let's see. So the first question, I got more questions than I expected. I don't know if I can go over all of them, but I'm going to try. Hi from LA. Hello. Also in the live chat, if you could post more of your questions, I'll try to look at the live chat as much as I possibly can. But if I miss anything, I apologize. Anyway, so the first one, why is it? This is by somebody that I'm not going to even try pronouncing people's names. I suck at it. All right. So why is it difficult for people to accept atheism? Is it psychological that a God is believed to be our master? This is really different for everybody. But what I do think is that if you actually go read a book called Breaking the Spell, I don't know why, you get an understanding of why religion has become so powerful. I mean, at least it makes a compelling case for it. It basically makes the argument that religion, just like many other ideas, is a meme. And just like genes are responsible for biological evolution, memes are also kind of in a different evolution, different kind of evolution, right? So religions are these ideas that have mastered taking advantage of our greatest fears, our greatest desires, and when I say mastered, it sounds like there's an intelligence behind it. Just like in a biological evolution, it looks like there's some intelligence behind it, but once you understand the process, you just see it was just the survival of the fittest. And with religion, it's kind of the same thing, right? It's not like some evil geniuses got together in a room and decided, like, how could we make up, like, is with an idea. Like, a lot of people that are anti-Islam, I notice, they think like everybody that is in the Islamic world or in the Christian world, that the imams or the bishops or whoever is in charge, they all like are on this evil plan together to take over the world. But a lot of these leaders have bought into this bullshit themselves. And it's not like there's a designer or a mastermind behind these. These are the ideas that survived longer because it managed to take advantage of the human psychology better for it to survive. Greetings from India. 2 greetings from India. Hello. I just ordered Armin's book on Amazon. Oh, thank you. I hope you like it. Try the breaking the spell as well. That's it, Daniel. That's a really good book that explains what I'm saying. And again, this I'm responding to the first question right now, that is asking why is it difficult for people to accept atheism. And I just explaining that religion is such a powerful. And here's the thing, a lot of people always say, like, how could people be this stupid? And it, the thing is that, first of all, a lot of smart people are religious. And a lot of people are also not very smart. But it doesn't really matter. First of all, you could be smart about something and very dumb about something else. But even if you're not smart, I do think that it shouldn't matter. I mean, we shouldn't. A lot of atheists always say, like, why can't people be smarter? Why can't they just be more educated? Why are, but given how powerful religion is and how it even manages to take advantage of some of the smartest people, and given that being smart is not a very common thing, and we shouldn't expect it to be a very common thing, and we shouldn't just give up on people that are not very smart. And I do think that people that are not very intelligent are always looked down upon, and a lot of people think that's fair because they're just dumb people. But you have to understand, just being smart is a function of your biology and your environment, and you can't just really give up on people just because they're not that smart. There are ways to reach out to people in simple ways that if somebody wants me to talk about that, I can, even if they're not very smart. I mean, if we want to give up on people that are not very smart, we have to give up on most of the planet. And I don't think that's fair to those people. Anyways, but I think that book, if anybody's interested for why religions are as powerful as they are and why is it hard to give up on God and religion, I think that's a very good book to read. All right, so there's somebody named Kim. She's asking what classifies as Islamophobia. I ask this because of a discussion in my literature class about a play called Disgraced. A man gave up his faith to Islam and doesn't associate it with the religion. So, and states how women should be. Okay, so there was a play in her school. Somebody that left Islam was talking about how in his religion it talks about women being stoned and some other questionable verses in the Quran. And this guy was called an Islamophobe. And she's saying, I personally dislike the religion of peace, quote unquote peace. Am I an Islamophobe? I mean, we talked about this many times. Islamophobe is such a nonsense phrase because it kind of suggests that being, first of all, just because I'm against using me and many other people are against using the phrase Islamophobe, the word Islamophobe, doesn't mean that we don't acknowledge that there is anti-Muslim bigotry. And I think anti-Muslim bigotry is a much better way to talk about this problem than the word Islamophobe, because Islam is an idea. Muslims are people, right? Obviously, targeting a whole bunch of group of people, and being bigoted against them is not a good idea. And some people are, I mean, it's a horrible thing to do. And some people are saying, well, no, I mean, I'm anti-Muslim because these people are fucking wrong and these people are stupid and it's okay to be anti-Muslim. Well, and as I just mentioned, being wrong is not a crime. I'm sure I'm wrong about many things. I'm sure I'm wrong about some things that are, if somebody eventually managed to point out to me that I'm wrong about it, I would be embarrassed that I ever was so wrong about it. Like it's so obvious if somebody points it out to me, but I just don't know which opinions I'm wrong about, because if I knew, I wouldn't have those opinions. So just being hateful to people because you think they're wrong about something is just hateful. And here's what I tell people. I think, like, if you want to fight Islam, the only way to fight, there's no way to ban Islam, that's never gonna work. And people have tried it. Ataturk in Turkey tried it. Reza Shah in Iran tried it. Look at their countries right now. Look at how Islam, it brings a backlash. I mean, religions grow on its members being the victim. That's what they feed on. So banning Islam or being hateful to Muslims, not only that's not going to help you fight Islam, it's actually going to backfire. It's going to help it grow faster. But I see no problem with fighting Islam as an idea. And that's why I think Islamophobia is such a harmful way of phrasing anti-Muslim bigotry, because it kind of uses the bigotry against Muslims and uses that as an excuse to try to protect it, make a shield around Islam as an idea itself. And basically, this confusion between Islam and Islam as an idea and Muslims as people, has helped a lot of people both on the regressive left and on the far right. The people on the far right like confusing Islam with Muslims, because when people like us go and say that Islam is horrible, Islam is evil because of this and this, they're like, yes, Islam is evil. and therefore Muslims are bad, right? And therefore it's okay to be hateful to a Muslim. So they like to confuse Islam with Muslims, and a lot of people on the left also like to confuse Islam with Muslims because they point to people like us and like, oh, we're criticizing Islam, and they want to always feel like, oh, we're just these people, these heroes that are protecting the poor minorities, and we are that people like us that are criticizing Islam. We are part of those bigots that they need to defend the poor Muslims against, because we're just questioning their views. So that makes us bigots. So the word Islamophobe is such a big problem because it helps confuse Muslims with Islam, and it confuse anti-Muslim bigotry with criticism of Islam as an ideology. So whenever somebody says, I have a problem with Islam because of this and this and this, and somebody says you're a bigot or you're racist, or you're helping that narrative, just call bullshit on that. Because I'm talking about Islam as an idea. I'm not talking about Muslim. What are you talking about? Some people come to me and say, well, even if you're not talking about Muslim, you're helping with you're helping with the far right racist, bigoted narratives. You're giving them ammunition. That's bullshit as well, because as long as something is true, you should just say it. You shouldn't just always be so concerned about because people will take your words and use it for whatever narrative. I mean, if you want to be so careful about who's going to take your words and help them for their narrative, you just better say nothing at all, because people will do it. People will be able to do that. One example I give to people is that, for example, Nazi Germany, Nazism, they took the concept of evolution and natural selection, and they twisted it, and that's why they use it as their narrative to promote why it's okay to kill the Jews, or why it's okay to do race washing, and find out who the superior race is, and not let anyone else's genes go to the next generation. So basically, they use evolution as an excuse for the crimes that they were committing. Does that mean that we should stop teaching evolution because somebody could use it in a wrong way and sell their bigoted ideology? So should we not teach evolution in school because of that? No, that's fucking bullshit. If something is true, you say it, and if you find out somebody is taking it out of context or using it for something evil, you try to point it out. If you notice it, you point it out, like, no, I'm not with those guys. They are taking what I'm saying that is true. They're taking it for something that I don't back, that I don't agree with, right? Again, the best way to fight Islam is to reach out to Muslims. So, and the only way to reach out to Muslims is to befriend Muslims. Some people say, so you're saying the best way to fight Islam is to befriend Muslims, but you're saying so many offensive things that they're never going to talk to you. And I say, I give a lot of Muslims more credit than you think. A lot of Muslims get so offended and they don't talk to you. Yes, but I have had lots of experiences because a lot of people find what I said offensive, they came and tried to challenge me. And they thought I was a bigot because the left and other people have convinced them that I was a bigot, that I had something against them personally. And once they came and tried to defend Islam, and I explained to them why my position against Islam, no matter how strong it is, it's not an attack on them, they got it. A lot of them understood it once I talked to them one-on-one. And some of them even are now ex-Muslims. And the ones that are not ex-Muslims at least understand that an attack on Islam is not an attack on Muslim. I have had a lot more success with convincing Muslims that my attack on Islam is not an attack on Muslims than a lot of leftists. I don't know why that is. And again, this is not all leftist people, but a lot of them. I was going to point something else about this right now. I just escaped my mind. I hope it comes back to me because it was important. What was I going to say? Fuck. Anyways, I'll just go to the next question. All right. Do the people close to him, to me, know that he created Atheist Republic, and has that had any impact on his family and social life? I'm actually kind of lucky, and this is not true about many ex-Muslims. My parents were liberal. I was actually at some point a lot more religious than they were, and I used to annoy the fuck out of them by trying to get them to become more better Muslims, to start praying, to fast, um, to not drink alcohol. But they didn't listen to me, and they found it very annoying when I was religious. And eventually, when I became an atheist, their reaction was like, "Oh, thank God," which is kind of weird. And even when I started Atheist Republic, my mom started praying that Atheist Republic to God that Atheist Republic becomes successful. And I was like, Mom, that makes no fucking sense. You're praying to God that my war against God becomes successful. And she was like, just you don't get it. I'm a mom. A mom has to do what a mom has to do. I'm like, okay. But she eventually became an atheist herself. And I get to say that because she passed away, so there's no risk of her getting arrested in Iran right now. But one thing else I want to share is that, well, when she got cancer, I couldn't go see her in Iran because obviously, given that I wrote a book called Why There Is No God, and given that I started Atheist Republic, if I go back to Iran, I wouldn't make it past the airport, right? They're gonna arrest me and go to Evin prison in Tehran, and they're gonna tell me where my execution date is. But she didn't want to die without seeing me. So the doctors told her that she shouldn't be leaving the hospital, but she said she doesn't care. She wants to see her son before she dies. So she came to, let me just make sure. Is the audio okay? Yeah. So she said, I don't care. I want to go see my son. And she came to Vancouver, Canada, and she died soon after because she wasn't supposed to leave the hospital. I think that was not, but she was happy to see her son before she dies. But I remember one time I went to the hospital, and because she was in so much pain, she was listening to the azan, which is the Islamic call to prayer, to make her pain go away. But when I went to the room, she was an atheist at this point, but she was embarrassed that she was listening to it, and she was like, Armin, I know this is bullshit, but it's helping me calm down. It's helping me with my pain. And I was like, Mom, why are you explaining this to me? Do whatever you want to help you. Of course, like it's so cute that she said that, but it was so sad as well that she thought that I would make. I don't know what she thought, but she was embarrassed that I saw her listening to the azan, which is, I mean, which is it's sad that she thought that, but it's cute at the same time. But if it helps you with your pain, just do it, right? Let me just see what's the next question. Why do you think some people think that people need God religion in order to be happy and have a better understanding about right and wrong? Yeah, again, I don't, this is some bullshit that people have been convinced of. For some reason, it seems like this whole idea of morality is something, even some people that are atheists think that. Some people that are atheists, like, you know what? This is all bullshit, but some people just need this to be good. All right. And they wouldn't be moral without it. That's such bullshit, because first of all, this whole idea of religion being mixed with morality is historically kind of new. Like, it came with Abrahamic religions. Before that, these were separate things. Like, you had religion and these gods that you had to do sacrifices and stuff to, so just to make sure that they don't fuck you up, or that you win in war, or that the crops keep growing and all that, but they weren't telling you how to live your life. I mean, at least not most of them. But I mean, if you look at pre-Abrahamic religions, the philosophy of ethics, it was so much more advanced and so much, I mean, it is now today, but compared to the Bible and the Old Testament and the Quran, these discussions were being made by philosophers for thousands of years in much greater detail and in much more advanced way than anything that the Bible or the Quran suggests. And this whole idea that you need morality, I mean, I don't think people are going to, if you look at the crime rates between atheists and religious people, there is no suggestion that religion is helping people. Some people say that it might even be the other way around. I don't know if there's actually good data to support that. But you know, if people point at countries, but if you don't use data unless it's peer reviewed, you could point to examples to suggest that maybe something is not true, but don't point at just countries like Norway and you know, any of the Scandinavian countries to make a claim yourself, because for you to be able to use data like that, they need to control for a lot of other external factors to make sure, and you know, these things need to be. I don't know if there is any good data on this. Send it my way if there is, but you know, I don't think good Muslims or good Christians are good because of their religion. And I think also most bad Muslims or bad Christians, most of them, are not bad because of their religion either. It's just there are some examples of good people that have been convinced that some things are good, which are not, and that's the tragedy here. You know, most religious people actually don't think about their religion that much. The minority that do, that causes a lot of problem sometimes. But most people are just Christian and Muslim or Jewish or whatever, or Hindu, but most of their life is they're focusing on other things. They're focusing on their career, on their school, on their children, and these religious idea doesn't cross their mind that much. So, and I just think that, you know, is part of what makes us good or bad people is a lot more complicated than that. Let me see if anybody is disagreeing with me in this. Wow, a lot of people from India. Oh, somebody's asking what is your impression about atheism surging in the Muslim world for lack of statistics about. Yeah, again, this is because we don't have stats. It just goes based on our experience, and based on our experience is it's growing. Actually, there are statistics, but the statistics, I don't know how reliable they are. They are anonymous, and it kind of it seems to suggest that there is like 5% atheism in Saudi Arabia, and if these are accurate, that's huge. That means in Saudi fucking Arabia, there's millions of atheists there, right? These are anonymous posts. And if that's true about Saudi Arabia, that means we are really making a difference. I mean, we get on Atheist Republic, we get messages all the time about Muslims that thank us or thank somebody else, or say because of Atheist Republic, because of Richard Dawkins, because of Carl Sagan. Carl Sagan is one name that keeps coming up, and when people say what made them an atheist, that they are now atheists, that they left their religion. And it's interesting because most people that do leave Islam do become atheists. Like once you realize that this religion thing was bullshit, it's hard for most of them to be convinced of another bullshit like Christianity. So based on our experience, it seems like this is a huge hidden growing movement. I mean, we have consulates all around the world, and they're growing. And for example, one thing that is very encouraging is like Atheist Republic. Like, we have access to our stats. The number one countries that you could see our fan base is coming from are Pakistan and Indonesia, which tells you a lot about the rise of atheism in Islamic countries. By the way, Indonesia is a country that is often forgotten when it comes to talking about Islam, which is kind of ridiculous, given that it's the most populated, highest population of, when it comes to population of Muslims in country. Indonesia is number one. When people think about Islam, they always think about Arab countries, but only 20% of Muslims are Arabs. 20% only. 20%. Okay. And yeah, so, and the largest Muslim country in the world is nowhere close to the Middle East. It's in Indonesia. And people don't think about Bangladesh. People don't think about Pakistan is not an Arab country. I mean, I think that when it comes to the number of most populated Muslim countries, you have to go to the 4 or 5 to finally hit an Arab country, which is, I think, Egypt. Let me see. What's the next question? All right. So my family says that even if they understand, by the way, I posted this on Facebook, and there's a whole bunch of questions there. And I posted one more again. Let me make sure all right, good. Do the people, no, I already asked you that. My family says that even if they understand that there is no God, I should not talk about this in public because it's dangerous, but I still do. What are your views on that? Well, that really depends on where you are. Let me just make sure. No, you seem to be, this person that is asking this question seems to be in, I don't know where you're from, but if it's not safe, I'm not going to tell you to do it or not to do it. It's your decision. Just know the risks before you make a decision. If it's safe for you, then I really think you should start talking about it, because a lot of people that are not are. Let me give you a story, right? There was this Bangladeshi blogger that his friend got hacked to death by Muslims because he was blogging about atheism and secularism. And they asked his friend, and this is a huge problem in Bangladesh, by the way. And they asked his friend, which was also a blogger, if he's afraid that this will happen to him as well. And he said, of course I'm afraid. And they asked him if he's going to keep blogging. And he said, yes, I'm going to keep blogging. And they're like, why would you keep blogging once you saw what happened to your friend? And he said, if I don't do it, who's going to do it? Like, nobody else is talking about this here. There's not that many of us in Bangladesh blogging about this. And when I read that, I was like, okay, this guy is braver than I ever can be. And this is why I get a little bit annoyed when people come to me and say, like, oh, Armin, you're so brave. Like, why do they think I'm brave? I'm in fucking Canada. I'm relatively safe compared to those guys. I mean, the things that I'm doing, people are doing this in Iran. People are doing this in Bangladesh. People are doing this in Pakistan. People are doing this in Saudi Arabia. Those people are on the front lines and they're taking the risk. And that's why I think if they're doing that over there, there's not that much excuse left for the rest of us. Also, a lot of people say that these people that are there, they should just keep their mouth shut, and we don't need atheist martyrs and stuff like that. And I say, no, fuck you. Don't say that. These people know. I mean, you shouldn't encourage people to take risks. But if somebody knows the risk that they're taking, and they decide to take the risk anyway because they're worth it, what you say to them is this: thank you. This is what you say to them. You don't tell them that they shouldn't be doing what they're doing. You just say thank you, and you try to find a way to support them. Because you have to understand that if you're living in the United States, Canada, UK, France, Germany, whatever, and you feel safe and you feel like you have freedom of speech, you have to understand that every right that you have, every freedom that you enjoy, any peace that you have, any sense of security that you have, one day somebody decided to sacrifice their life, their safety, their sense of security, their peace, for you to be able to enjoy that right now. These things that you're enjoying right now, these sense of security and peace and freedoms that you're enjoying right now, did not come that easily. Somebody sacrificed something for it. And these people right now in Iran, in Saudi Arabia, in Bangladesh, they're doing the same thing. And if they think it's worth it, all you do is you try to support them. You don't tell them that they should stop or what they're doing is not worth it. Let me just see more questions coming in. Okay, somebody's asking something about Germany. I don't know. So yeah, well, I mean, somebody says, Rob is saying, I imagine atheism is about the worst thing you could say you were. So I'm sure you were. You drove completely underground. Okay, so here's in Iran. Actually, something is it's a little bit weird actually, because this is a Shia country. Yeah, I did say I'm an atheist, but I didn't say it publicly. If I did say it publicly, I wouldn't be alive right now. I just said it to my friends, to my family. And a lot of people do say that atheism is growing in Iran, and a lot of people do mention that to their friends and family and on social media, in private groups and stuff. They just don't say it publicly, right? But it's more dangerous to say something against Muhammad than it is to say against God. I know it's weird, but it's like that. And it's even maybe worse if you say something against Hussein and Ali in Shia Iran than it is against Muhammad. Again, this seems weird. Muhammad's supposed to be holier than these people, so why is it? And then the worst danger you could get in yourself into is if you say something against Ayatollah Khamenei, which is the supreme religious leader in Iran. That's even more dangerous than any of those other things I mentioned. Again, this seems to be completely the opposite of how it's supposed to be. I mean, even among some atheist friends that I have, if you start mentioning Khamenei, and at least back when I was in Iran, people were like, look, like, you were talking about religion and how bullshit that is and how Islam is evil and all that, and people were like, yeah, and as soon as you talk about Khamenei, people like, you could see the concern in their eyes, right? So I mean, they see that as a greater threat to them, to their power. I think sometimes it's weird, but again, not that I know, or not that saying being against Islam is not going to get you in danger. I know people on death row right now in Iran because they insulted Islam or they questioned the religion. So, but you're in more danger, I guess, if you target the supreme leader. What was Armin's motivation behind creating this group? This is on Facebook. I guess it was for selfish reasons. I wanted to see if I could find more atheists, because when I was in Iran and I was an atheist, it felt pretty lonely. So at first it was a completely selfish reason. I just wanted to meet other atheists, but then it just grew to something much bigger than I thought it ever would. And now it's the biggest atheist platform in the world with 1,700,000 followers worldwide. But that was the original goal, was for me just to feel a little bit less alone. And now it's doing that for other people. We have consulates in every major city in the world. We have a podcast that people can leave voicemails, and it's going to be broadcasted there. By the way, go check it out. It's called Atheist Republic Voicemails. And it's just basically a podcast with no hosts. It's just voicemail after voicemail after voicemail from atheists all around the world. And you could get your own opinions on there. If you go to atheistrepublic.com, there's this green record button. If you press it, you can leave a voicemail and it goes on the Atheist Republic voicemail podcast. So if there's anything that I didn't mention that you wish I did mention, you could just go leave a voicemail there and it's going to be on the podcast. So this is a long question. I don't know if I should go. Okay, give a short answer for his book, Why There Is No God. His book title. So why did I call my book Why There Is No God? And actually, this is something a lot of people don't like, because the book title, my book, Why There Is No God, it seems like it's making a claim. Instead of saying why there's no evidence for God, it's saying that there is no God. And the reason why, first of all, saying if the title wanted to be accurate, it would go something like this: why there is no evidence for God, and therefore I lack belief in a God. Unless you present me with an evidence for God, then I will change my position and believe in a God. That would be the most accurate version of saying the title, but that doesn't fit on a cover, and it's not very sexy. But at the same time, I don't think that, if somebody asks me, is Santa is real? I'm going to be like, no. Are werewolves are real? I'm going to be, no. Are fairies real? I'm going to be like, no. I'm not going to say, this would be a more accurate response, though. I'm not going to say, well, werewolves might be real, but it's very unlikely because there has been no evidence for werewolves being real. Nobody has presented, and because there's no evidence, it's as likely as an infinite number of other claims that I could make without providing evidence. But that's not how you respond to questions like that. If somebody asks me, hey, that restaurant that you went yesterday, is it a good restaurant? Should I go? I'm going to say, yeah, that was pretty good. Go check it out. They have really good food. I'm not going to be like, well, that was my experience, but that might have been just that one day. And because my taste might be different from you, like blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to give it, I just think that if something is very unlikely or very likely, the statements that we make in real life is that we're going to say, yeah, that's true, or that's not true. We don't adjust every statement, because if we did that, we had to do that. We would do that with every statement that we make. We wouldn't make any claims ever, right? Is that a good brand? Well, it's very likely, but we don't know because, there's, is that it? Does that exist? You don't treat others' claims like this. So why are we so picky about God? I actually mentioned that in the introduction of the book. I say, if somebody asks me, is your wife like somebody makes a claim, your wife, an assassin from China, hired to maybe kill me, is that true? I'm going to be like, no. But do I really know that's true? I mean, it could be true. It's not impossible. Just seems very unlikely. But I'm not going to say that. I'm going to be like, no, that's ridiculous. So why do we do that with God? If that's why when somebody asks me, is God real? I could make the statement, well, there's no evidence for the existence of God. So that means that God is very unlikely to exist, and makes its likelihood as likely as an infinite number of other claims that I could make without providing evidence. Instead of saying that, I'm going to be like, no, that's ridiculous. how could you think that before anything existed there was consciousness, and there's a conscious being that was responsible for, and where if that's, consciousness itself seems a very complicated thing, and you coming up with a ridiculous response to saying where did all this come from, and you just putting a conscious being at the beginning of everything, and like there you go, I fix everything. That seems like ridiculous. I'm going to be like, no, that's a ridiculous claim. I don't think that's true. I'm just going to say that. But so the book itself, though, goes over all the claims, all the different arguments people make for the existence of God, and it basically responds to all of them, to why they're not good arguments. To 20 different claims is a response to the 20 different claims for the existence of God. A lot of people claim that, oh, the book is too simple, but that was the point. The book is simple. It's called Simple Responses, and it provides you with resources to go get in more. With each chapter gives you resources if you want to learn more about or read more about that specific topic on that chapter. It gives you resources for where to do so. But the book itself is just an intro to atheism. Greetings. Oh, hey, Beach. Let me see. Love this organization. Keep it up. Thank you. Flat earthers are stupid. Can't argue with that. I'm imagining how can people follow and worship a prophet who married a minor? Don't they find it disturbing that a grown-up man almost okay, first of all, Muslims don't worship Muhammad. They just think that he's a prophet. I mean, arguably it seems like they worship him, but they say they don't. They worship God. It's not like Christianity where Jesus is God and God itself. Muhammad was a messenger only, apparently. But the way that they treat Muhammad, it's very confusing. Like, it does seem like they worship him more than God himself, which I understand why it's confusing to people. But if you ask Muslims, they don't worship Muhammad. But how could they follow somebody like that? Because Muhammad is supposed to be a role model for all Muslims. The answer is they don't. They say they do, but most Muslims are better than Islam, thankfully. I mean, a lot of Muslims don't even know about this hadith that Muhammad had sex with a 9-year-old. And a lot of them that do are uncomfortable with it. I mean, you could just see how uncomfortable they are about it as soon as you bring it up. But I know a lot of Muslims that as soon as I pointed that, so like, what the fuck are you talking about? He never did that. And then when you mention the hadith, there's a lot of different responses to this, okay? So it really depends on the Muslim. I had discussions with Muslims that say, yep, he did that and it's totally fine. You just don't get it. A lot of Muslims that say, no, that hadith is completely wrong. And when I point out that this is authentic hadith followed by all Sunni Islamic school of thought, they're like, well, some of them don't have an answer. Some of them say, well, these schools of thought are bullshit. I just follow the Quran only and not the hadith, which is weird because the Quran itself tells you to follow Muhammad as a role model, and you can't really do that without the hadith. And this is a new thing people say. I mean, hadith is, for most Muslims, the best way to figure out how to follow the Quran. And a lot of there are many excuses for why this was okay. Some people are I've met with Muslims that say, well, some Muslims just say this is how it is and it's okay, and you can't. There's nothing wrong with having sex with a 9-year-old, which is, I know, is sad to hear, but I know I have talked to many Muslims that do say that. A lot of Muslims will also say that 9-year-old girls were more mature back then. Apparently, genetically, we have changed in the past 1400 years, which is absolutely not true. That's completely bullshit. a lot of Muslims, this in Iran at least, they told us that, and I heard this from other Muslims as well, that girls in more hot climates, they mature faster, which is bullshit. I lived in the Philippines for a year. It's a very tropical country. It's a very hot, and children there are just like children over here. They're pretty young. A lot of people, what else do they say? What else excuses they have? The other excuses is that, well, this was the norm back then, which is a very weird admission, because that means that, okay, that means that Islam doesn't belong in the modern world then. These were the standards back then. Then you agreeing with the fact that you can't follow Muhammad as a role model, so you agree that this is not something to be followed now, please? Anyways, it's ridiculous. I just but a lot of people say that this is a cheap shot at Islam. You shouldn't bring it up in a discussion. I say that's bullshit. I mean, you should bring it up. I mean, this is something that a lot of Muslims, as soon as they found out, were made uncomfortable. And I think that's important, to make Muslims uncomfortable about things in their religion that they should be uncomfortable about. Okay, I can't. It's time. I'm gonna go back to Facebook, because it seems like when did he realize religion was not him? When did George is asking, when in Facebook, when did he realize? When did Armin realize that religion was not for him? I was about 16 years old. And when I first lost faith in God, at first I was really. A lot of people say, "Oh, you lost faith in God because you wanted to sin. You didn't, you had a bad experience." For me, actually, that's not true. I really loved my God, and I did not want to lose my God. This was not an emotional decision for me. For me, it was a more logical decision. When I was losing my faith in God, I used to cry, pray to God, and it's like, God, the more I think about you, the less sense you're making to me. I'm losing you. I don't want to burn in hell. Please, if you're out there, please show me, give me a revelation, give me an evidence, point me in the right direction. I don't want to lose you. You're the only thing I have. You're my only friend. Please don't let me lose you. I don't know what to do without you. And it wasn't a decision, when I lost my faith, it wasn't because I wanted to. It's just because I thought I had no other choice, because it just seemed at some point obvious that this is all bullshit and made up. How would Iran be without Islam? Well, that's a very hard question. But so Iran's religion before Islam was Zarathushtri, which is in English is Zoroastrianism. And I really don't know. I also think that a lot of Iranians think that it would have been fantastic. And a lot of Iranians think that, Zoroastrianism was the best religion, because a lot of anti-Islam Iranians love that religion, and they think that was the true religion of Iran. And this Arab, the way a lot of hatred from Islam in Iran is very mixed with a whole bunch of racism, which is really sad. And this is a big problem I have when it comes to reaching out to Iranian atheist activists, because their hatred for Islam has turned into hatred for Arabs. And they see this Islam as this foreign Arab invasion of this barbaric culture, and they have this romanticized view about how Iran used to be before the Arabs came and brought Islam to Iran. And they think, like, they claim that a lot of people that in Iran that are not Zoroastrian themselves think Zoroastrianism I mean, they have Zoroastrian tattoos, necklaces, and they think that that's the true culture of Iran before this barbaric Arabs came and destroyed everything. And when you ask them about the Zoroastrian religion, most of them don't know shit about it. So it's very strange to me that they love it so much. But, you know, Iran itself means the land of the Aryans. And a lot of Iranians say they are Aryans. This is why there's a lot of Hitler enthusiasts in Iran, and which is sad. I mean, in Iran, this is the problem. The greatest force that you have against religion is this nationalist, racist ideology, which is as bad as Islam, I think. And I mean, I was watching some YouTube protests in Iran, and the chants that they were making, one of them was, "We are Aryans, not Arab worshippers," and another one was, "They say everything comes from God, but all our problems come from the Arabs." And you know, even some Iranians, when they come to me on Facebook and when they find out that the person that started Atheist Republic is an Iranian, they message me and like, "Oh, I didn't know the founder of Atheist Republic is a fellow Aryan. Oh, you get these. Thank you so much for, you know, fighting against these barbaric Arabs." And I'm like, okay, calm the fuck down. That's not what we're doing here. And you know, a lot of the atheists on Atheist Republic are Arabs, and there's a lot of atheist activism in the Arab world, and even Muslim people that are Arabs. A lot of them are fighting for a lot of the values that we're fighting, which is, you know, even though I find that that's a contradiction with Islam. The fact, you know, here's the thing: a lot of Muslims that are fighting for secularism, women rights, gay rights, you know, I think that these values are not compatible with Islam. But at the same time, I think these people are good people and are fighting for the values that we're fighting for. So while I might point out that these ideas are un-Islamic and there's a contradiction between Islam and these values that they're fighting for, at the same time, I will support and fight with them, alongside with them, for these values. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to point out that these are un-Islamic, but that doesn't mean I'm going to withhold support for their fight for these values. These, you know, you could point us out and still support them without that's not a contradiction. You know, just because you're supporting people, I mean, people hold contradictory viewpoints, right? A lot of people are full of contradictions, and I think these Muslims, you know, not everything a Muslim does is Islam. Many Muslims are influenced by a lot of different competing ideologies, and they're influenced by Islam, they're influenced by humanist values, secular values, and these ideas in their mind are competing with each other. And a lot of times these better modern ideas trump Islam because most people are good, and that's why it's easier for these values to take hold. I mean, most Muslims would, even some Muslims that might say that, you know, something in Islam that we find so questionable, if they say they support it, honestly, I think that they would never do it themselves. They just feel like it's their duty to say that they support it. I know it's fucked up, but that's how it is. Can atheists around the world demand their own piece of land or country? I think there must be a legal proceeding. I don't think so. First of all, I don't know why we should do that. I mean, we can do it. We can have a movement with that. I don't think you can do that, first of all. And I think even if you could do that, the challenges of doing that is much greater than the potential benefit. Can anybody tell me why would we do so? I mean, we don't want to give up on the world, all right? And this is another problem, actually. A lot of people in the West, for example, they're like, you know what? As long as you don't bring that bullshit here, do whatever the fuck you want in your own country. And that's a very selfish way of, I think, looking at it. I mean, these are your fellow human beings. The main victims of Islam are Muslims. And this is why I find it very problematic for when people say why that we're being bigots, because we are against Islam because what it does to Muslims more than what it does to non-Muslims. Yeah, a lot of non-Muslims are victims of Islam, but the vast majority of victims of Islam are Muslims in Islamic countries. And even if you could build walls around your country and you feel safe and secure and you think that that bullshit is never going to get to you, it's never going to impact you, which I think that's not the case. It's going to impact you even if it doesn't come to your country. But you should, I mean, I hope most of us here at least are humanists, and we care about our fellow human beings no matter how far they are from us, and we want to fight this ideology that is hurting not just atheists but also believers. Let me see if in the live chat. Oh, by the way, if you have a question, if you tag Atheist Republic just like Beach did right now, that's going to help me notice it more. Thank you, Beach. Do the different sects of Islam have different end time stories? Yes, they do. That's a very, so the question is, do the different sects of Islam have different end time stories? I know more about the Shia version, which is definitely something that the Sunnis don't believe in. And this is the main Shia sect of Islam is the 12er Shia. I used to think it's the only Shia Islam until I left Iran. I mean, and found out a whole bunch of other different kinds of Shias. But the main branch of Shia Islam is the 12er one, and that's the one with the 12. There was so in Shia Islam you have 12 imams that come after Muhammad, and they're the religious leaders, and they are pure ma'asum, which means that they never sinned. And this is why in Shia Islam we have so much more hadith than Sunni Islam, because all these 12 imams after Muhammad, they have their own hadith, which is a nightmare for us in school, because we had to remember so much quotes from these imams, and it was a nightmare to remember which quote was from each imam during exam time. But and what years they lived and under what government and where they lived. Oh my god, that was such a I hated that course. But so the 12 imam, so you had Muhammad, he dies, and Sunnis believe that Abu Bakr is the first Khalifa, and then you have 4 Khalifas, which are the Rashidun, or the rightly guided ones. But Shias think that Ali was supposed to succeed Muhammad as a religious leader, not as a prophet, but just as the religious, spiritual leader. And he was cheated out of his position by Abu Bakr. So they follow Ali as the first Imam, which is the 4th Khalifa for the Sunnis. And then after Ali, there's 12 Imams that come, that each one is the son of the one before him, which Sunnis hate because it kind of looks like a monarchy. But Shia's like, how could this be a monarchy? These were all poor people that didn't live lavish lives. But all of these imams come one after another, but the 12th one, and most of them get poisoned by the Sunni Khalifas at the time. But so they were a lot of times in hiding. The 12th one, he disappeared. He gets he fell into a well, and he has a short period of disappearance, and then he has a longer term of disappearance, which is until now apparently. So he's been missing. He's in hiding and he's alive even to this day. It's not like he died and now he's going to come back one day for Shias. No, he never died. He's still around somewhere right now. And when they say sometimes maybe he's right now maybe in Philippines and he's like working as a carpenter there, or maybe he's in the United States right now and selling candy to the kids. He could be anywhere right now, but he's still alive. He's in hiding. There's some people say that they cited him at different places. It's kind of like Sasquatch. There's sightings of him reported, and but apparently one day he's going to come back and he's going to bring Islam back to the whole world. This is a Shia belief. And when he comes back, Jesus is going to come back too, and Jesus is going to be side by side him, fighting non-Muslims and killing all of us here. And this is going to be the end of times. And Imam Zaman, which is the Imam Mahdi or Imam Zaman, which is the 12 Imam, is going to bring Islam to the whole world. And his message is going to be heard by the, that's the time where Islam is going to dominate the whole world. So that's the Shia one. But for the Sunnis, I don't know it as detailed as the Shia version, but the ISIS version is that there's a Mahdi that will come back, which is not the 12th Imam of the Shias. I don't know if they call him Mahdi. I think they do. But I don't know who this guy is supposed to be that comes, but whoever it is will have a fight with this red dude that is in chains somewhere. Their story is so fucking weird. I couldn't even believe. I didn't know about it again about the Sunni version until much later. But when I heard it, it sounded so fucking ridiculous. I don't know what percentage of Sunnis believe in this. They have, or if they all have a different version of it. But it was very ridiculous, the version that I hear. But then I noticed that it just sounds ridiculous because I wasn't used to it. I'm pretty sure the Imam Mahdi version that we tell Sunnis, it sounds ridiculous to them as well. What do you think about Tariq Fatah? Honestly, don't know much about him. He doesn't. I mean, I do know about him as based on the amount of interaction I have with him, and the meetings I had with him. He just seems like a very nice. I had a YouTube discussion with him, and he just seems like a nice guy. I know some other people that don't think so, but I don't know based on what, and I haven't done much research. Based on what I mean, here's what I don't like. What I don't like is when people hate on somebody because of their disagreements that they have with somebody. I think that as long as somebody is a nice person, no matter how ridiculous you find their views, that doesn't mean that we should hate them, because again, like I said, we're all wrong about something, and every one of us here probably is holding some idea that is wrong, that is ridiculously wrong. And if we knew how ridiculous it was, we would be ashamed of ever holding it. I'm pretty sure most of us have something like that. I just don't know what that is, again, because if I knew, I would change it. So I don't know what the person that asked that question, if you could tell me what do you think, because then I maybe could comment on that, because I had very limited talks, 1 hour talk with him, and my talk with him was nothing but pleasant, even though we completely disagreed on a whole bunch of stuff. So if you go just search for Tariq Fatah and Armin Navabi, you could see that discussion that we had on YouTube, and we disagreed on a whole bunch of stuff, but it was very pleasant. And he just seems like a nice guy. I don't know that the people that do dislike him, if it's based on disagreements. If it's based on disagreements, I don't think that's a good reason for hating on anybody. But if it's based on something, I don't know if it's based. I can't make a judgment on something that I don't know about. But if you have a specific question about a position that he has, then maybe I could give you a more specific answer. I mean, check Facebook again, see if there's more questions coming in here. Yes, there is. What's your view on militant atheism? Depends what you mean by militant atheism. If militant atheism means unapologetically being atheists and not holding back on your criticism on religion, then I'm very much for it. A lot of people tell us that if you are advocating for atheism, or if you're like preaching atheism, you're just as bad as the Christians and Muslims that are preaching Christianity and Islam. What makes you different then? And I tell them there's nothing wrong with Muslims advocating Islam, and there's nothing wrong with Christians advocating for Christianity. They should be able to. That's not the problem with Islam and Christianity. The problem is that we don't get to. The problem is that we don't have the same opportunity. The problem is that in many countries, we are either shamed to talk about our views, or it's illegal, because everybody should be able to put their ideas out there, and there should be a free market of ideas where all these ideas compete with each other. So when you say you're just bad as Muslims because you are preaching your version of what you think is true, I tell them that's not the problem I have with Islam. If in fact, if in any country people try to stop Muslims for preaching Islam, or stop Christians from preaching Christianity, I would stand with them and try to defend for their right for freedom, freely express themselves. I mean, I honestly don't understand why any. Here's what I say: like, if somebody is a Muslim, I really don't get why wouldn't they be preaching Islam. I actually get the Muslims that preach Islam more than the ones that don't. Because don't they care about other people that are not Muslims if they think they're going to be burning in hell? I went to a church once, and I was invited to a church, and one guy came to me like, "So you're an atheist?" They were very nice to me, by the way. And I said, "Yeah," and like he said, and he thought he was being nice. I mean, he was being nice, but he said, "Don't worry, I'm not going to preach Christianity to you. I'm not going to." I accept you the way you are. And I was like, why wouldn't you preach Christianity to me? Don't you think I'm gonna burn in hell if I die an atheist? And he said, yeah, but that's not for me to decide, that's for God to decide. I'm like, yeah, but you can change that. You think if I die as an atheist, I'm gonna burn in hell, and you're not even gonna try to save me? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, you don't really care? Don't you care about me not burning? Like, so it's true that a lot of Muslims or a lot of Christians, when they try to fight you against you, a lot of them, it's not because they care. A lot of them are just trying to defeat you. But for the ones that actually, because they just want to win and just like prove you wrong, but a lot of them also genuinely care. They genuinely are concerned about the fact that you're going to burn in hell, and they want to save you. And even that's ridiculous and wrong, it's kind of nice. It's coming from a good place. So this is what I tell the Muslims. And like, oh, how could you say I'm fighting Islam and think Muslims are going to accept you as a friend? How could you say Islam is a dangerous ideology and ever accept for Muslims to come talk to you and you be buddies with them? They're not going to talk to you after you being so offensive. And I say, listen, I say to them that you have to understand that if you are right, this is what I'm telling you. If you are right, if Islam is true, or if Christianity is true, then the most dangerous ideology, or people say don't call it an ideology, I'm just going to say it, right? The most dangerous viewpoint, or lack thereof, is atheism. Because every single other way of looking at the world, if Islam is true, might hurt you in this life. But atheism is robbing you from your eternal life after this one, right? So if you are right, you should be fighting atheism. And you should be saying that atheism is a dangerous ideology. And if you say that, I don't see that as a personal attack. In fact, if you say that because you think that I'm in danger, if that's your reasoning behind it, I will genuinely appreciate that, even though I disagree with you. I really think that you care about me, and I thank you for it. And when I phrase it like that, then they see why when I say Islam is a dangerous ideology, and when I say why we need to fight Islam, when I phrase it like that to them, then they understand why when I say those things, that's not an attack on Muslims. Because if you say atheism is a dangerous ideology, and if you say we need to fight atheism, and if that's your line of reasoning for why you say those things, that's not an attack on me personally. That's you trying to help me. And then they get why when I say I'm attacking Islam and Islam is dangerous, why that's not a personal attack on Muslims. Then they get it. I say to them, I might be wrong, but even if I'm wrong, you have to understand that this is not an attack on you. This is not a personal attack on you. So please, please, please don't group me with those bigots, because if you do that, you're just giving them more legitimacy. And you are giving them, because there's going to be, Islam is going to be attacked, and if you group us with them, you're basically making the bigoted platform against Islam the only game in town. You're giving the anti-Islam voice to the anti-Muslim people. Give it to us. Let's have a civil discussion about these things. Show people that we can have a civil discussion about these things, even if we don't change our minds, because we might challenge your views, but we will fight those people that are challenging your rights. And when I say this to people, they get it. A lot of people say, like, no, Armin, if you talk about Islam like this, they're not going to listen to you because you're being offensive. And I tell them, no. When I talk to Muslims and when I explain this to them like this, they get it. Most of them get it. You're not giving them enough credit. Even the ones that don't become skeptical about their religion, don't leave Islam, stay Muslim, they still get, when I explain it to them, they still get it, that this is not being a bigot. So if they get it, how come you can't get it? Muslim countries struggle with education quality as Islam infiltrate influence. Okay, so this is about in education in Islamic countries. Well, I don't know about, when we say Islamic countries, you have to understand that you're talking about a whole, wait, is this about, a whole different bunch of countries at the same time, and the situation in them are very different from each other. I could say in Iran, at least, Islam has had an influence on education. Even very recently, there was this push for bringing more internationally accepted standards to Iran to evaluate if kids are being. There was a big push on this in Iran to bring improve the standards, and guess who was resisting it? It was the religious institutions and the religious leaders, and they were saying this as an anti-Islamic attack on our children and bringing foreign ideas, anti-Islamic ideas to our children, and that's what stopped it. So at least in Iran, I agree with you that this heavy push for bringing better international modern standards to our education was stopped by religious leaders. That was the force against it. Why do you compare Islam with Nazis? Thank you for asking that. First of all, because why not? A lot of people, when I compare Nazism with communism, nobody complains. When I compare Islam with Christianity, nobody complains. But this Nazism is such a sensitive thing right now. People just don't like to compare it with things. And they keep, when you compare it with something, people are like, oh, Godwin fallacy. Oh, this is a logical fallacy. You can't use it. And I'm like, no, it's called the Godwin law. It's not called the logical. It's not a fallacy. It's not a logical fallacy. One reason why I compare it is because people tell me I can't. And I tell them, yeah, I can. Look, I just did. Another reason is it's one of the best ways to compare ideologies to, because I tried comparing Islam to other evil movements to make my point. I think a better example than Nazism would be, or Hitler, it would be Genghis Khan and the Mongol Empire. That's a much better comparison to Islam. You know, there's a lot more similarities there. The problem is a lot of people don't know the details about Genghis Khan and what he did. So it's hard for you to use it as a point of reference. The reason why the Godwin law exists, and when you're comparing things, a lot of people all of a sudden start talking about Nazism, is because it's such a good way to compare things, because a lot of people know the details. Even people that don't know much history, what happened in World War II and the details, some of the details behind what happened, more people are familiar with that. So when you compare any movement with that, people know what you're talking about. And one reason why and again, when people say you can't and they're so sensitive about it, again, because when they say when you compare Islam to Nazism, they're like, oh, so you're saying Muslims are as bad as Nazis. And again, it's a great way to show people that, wait, I was talking about Islam and you just said Muslim as Nazis. And it's a great way to show, because people are so sensitive about you making this comparison, and as soon as you make it, they call you a bigot. You just this is a good way to show them that they're confusing Islam with Muslims again. Because I was just comparing two different ideologies, and now all of a sudden you're saying I'm saying Muslims are as bad as Nazis, where I wasn't talking about Muslims and Nazis. I was talking about Islam and Nazism. So that knee-jerk reaction to ever comparing Islam to anything evil, being bigotry. And the interesting thing is that I heard this from people that are actually go out and say Islam and Muslims are not the same thing. But as soon as I compare Islam with Nazism, they have this knee-jerk reaction of, what? But Muslims are not as bad as Nazis. I'm like, see, even you don't get, you can conflate Islam with Muslims, because I wasn't talking about Muslims. And then another thing is, a lot of people say that, yeah, but by suggesting that, by comparing that, you're saying that they're the same thing. I'm like, no, if two things were the same thing, you wouldn't be comparing them, because there's nothing to compare them. They're the same thing. And they say, well, you're saying it, they're just as bad. And I say, actually, I think Islam is worse than Nazism. And people are like, oh, how could you say that? Nazism killed so many people. So many Jews were gassed and all that stuff. And I tell them, well, okay, first of all, what are we talking about? Are we talking about the text, the ideology itself, or are we talking about the consequences? Because if we talk about the ideology itself, and people are like, oh, it's apple and oranges, you can't compare them. I'm like, wait, I can what are you talking about? I can compare even apples and oranges. I prefer apples over oranges. There you go. I compared them. Yeah, I don't understand why people are so sensitive about people are like, they're completely different. I'm like, yeah, that's why you compare them. They're both ideologies. They're both in the same category of things. How could you not compare them? But if you look at the Quran, if you read the Quran, and if you replace the word non-believers with Jews, and then you compare it with Mein Kampf, the Quran actually becomes way more hateful towards the Jews if you just change the word non-believers with Jews. The Quran itself, not even the Hadith. So that's just the ideology itself. But what about the consequences? Are we so if we're talking about the consequences, are we talking about now or historically? If we're talking about historically, we have to understand that Nazism came into power for a short amount of time. It was very destructive, and then it died. It wasn't an ideology that managed to survive long. And if you're talking about the consequences, measuring the consequences of an ideology, you have to take into account its survivability. I mean, Nazism is still a huge problem, but it's not in any government. It's not a government power anymore, right? It came, it died. If you take the total number of victims of Islam in the past 1400 years, I'm pretty sure it's way more than the one generation lifetime that Nazism came to power and died off. Not died off completely, but as in power, right? In a government. I mean, I hope it never comes back again. And we hope every time you see any signs of it coming back, you have to hit it in the head as much as you possibly can and try to tackle it. But it doesn't seem like an idea that, I mean, I hope not. I mean, doesn't Islam and Christianity and Judaism and Hindus, these seem like more powerful memes that spread. They're better viruses of a mind that spread fast, right? Just because, and people like, well, more Muslims are good people than Nazis. And yeah, that's the problem with Islam. It manages to take advantage of, I mean, for more people to be Nazis, you need, for it to spread so much, you have to take advantage of so much hate in people. And I just don't think there's that much hate for you to be able to corrupt that much minds. I think Islam and Christianity, they have a better sugar coating for people with good intentions to be able to swallow it. So it manages to take advantage of more good people. And that's why it lasts longer, and that's why it spreads more, and that's why it hurts more people in the long run. Per year in power, Nazism hurt more people. And if Nazism was in power as long as Islam is in power, then yeah, we'd be way more fucked. But Nazism is self-defeating. And if you're not talking about historically, you're just looking now. People are like, oh, how could you say this? Like, look at what happened in Charlottesville. Oh my God, that's so insensitive. Like, yeah, that was what happened in Charlottesville was such a tragedy. But look at what's happening in fucking Yemen right now. Look at how many people are being suffering in Iran, in Saudi Arabia right now, in Pakistan right now. How many people are dying from this ideology right now? Name me the number of countries right now that have a Nazi government. Count them. 0. Name me how many countries right now have an Islamic government. Can you honestly tell me right now Nazism is a bigger problem than Islam? Because I don't think so. What do you think about Kurdistan? Okay, so my uncle got killed by my mom's brother got killed by the Kurds, which is some weird for some people to, when I say I actually support the Kurds people, even though, because I'm not very tribalistic. But I just want to mention that there was a civil war after the revolution. The Kurds in Iran, they tried to make their own country. It was a good time to become independent, right? Because they thought the government is weak. This was after the 1979 Islamic Revolution in Iran. The Kurdistan part, the Kurds in Iran tried to make their own country, become independent, and the Islamic government crushed them, they defeated them. They killed a lot of Kurds. And my uncle was fighting in that war, fighting the Kurds. This is something I didn't know, actually, because I thought my uncle died in the Iran-Iraq war, because the Kurdish war was completely wiped from our textbooks. It did not exist, because you cannot have a civil war, because, of course, Iranians are all united against foreign enemies. We couldn't have a civil war. So that was never told to us. So when I was very shocked when my mom actually told me that my uncle was killed by the Kurds, and I'm like, the Kurds? What the hell? When did that happen? And like, oh, it was in the civil war. And like, we had a war with the Kurds? So I didn't know that, even though I lived in Iran until much later. and that's the war my uncle died in. But I honestly think I'm gonna block this person. Yeah, there we go. So okay, and I know a lot of people might disagree with me on this and hate me in this, but I honestly think the Kurds were cheated out of a country after World War One, and you know, there was a great opportunity for them to get their own country, but whoever was drawing the borders at that time seemed to not understand. I do not understand how things work around those, you know, in the Middle East, or didn't care. They just drew the borders based on their own national interest, and you know, they divided the Kurds between Iran, Iraq, Turkey, and Syria. And I think even in World War II, there was an opportunity for them to get their country, but that was denied as well. But, you know, things in the Middle East would be so much better if the way you drew the borders after the fall of the Ottoman Empire was that you had the country, the borders were drawn that Shias were in one country, the Sunnis were in one country, and the Kurds were in one country. I think a lot of the conflict that you see right now in the Middle East would not be happening. You can't go back to that, because after you drew those borders, a lot of the Sunni areas, the countries that were made, the oil is, a lot of the oil and gas is in the Shias and in the Kurdish areas. So now if you want to go suggest to them like maybe these parts should be independent, they're like, fuck no, because all the good stuff is there. I mean, the Shia part of Saudi Arabia is where a lot of the oil is. So it's hard to undo that damage, but it would have been great if they had their own country. That's what I think. Why do Muslims only say it's out of context on bad verses, but not ones they like, for example? I mean, okay, so why do they... So why do Muslims, it's not just Muslims, Christians, I mean, it's pretty obvious why they do that. Like when you say, when you point to the verse in the Bible or the Quran and say, oh, God is love, be kind to your neighbors, and that blah blah blah, like, oh yeah, that's such a beautiful verse. But when you point to them, they're like, oh, crucify people or stone women for adultery, and like, oh, out of context. Well, obviously, because they're trying to defend their religion. I mean, that's their motivation. They out of context. When you point out to problematic parts of the religion, it's just because you don't get it. But apparently you need to be a scholar to understand the problematic verses, but any simpleton can understand the good parts of so if I point to the verse that says something nice, and I quote that, no, they never come to me like, oh no, you don't, why are you just quoting that? You're not a scholar, you don't speak Arabic. They're like, yeah, see. But so if they wanted to be consistent, they should say that about when I point to good verses as well. But no, they only say those things. And here's the thing: if you point to a verse, they might say, well, you don't speak Arabic, so you don't really get it. You have to really understand Arabic. And then you point, no, look, these people speak Arabic, and they say the same thing I'm saying. And they're like, well, they're not scholars. And then you're like, okay, no, look, this is an Arab scholar, and he's interpreting this verse exactly how I am. And like, well, he's not a Muslim Arab scholar, so he's misrepresenting it. And they're like, well, no, look, he's a Muslim Arab scholar. And like, well, no, he's just this guy has his own agenda. So basically, there's no way to win with this people. You can point out, look, for the past 14 fucking 100 years, the tafsir, the commentary on this verse by Arab and non-Arab Muslim scholars has been for this verse to mean this hit, like the verse that says you should hit your wife if she doesn't listen to you, has been completely consistent. Nobody suggested that this means something else until very recently, when just at the same time where our modern standards has improved enough for it not to be okay to hit your wife, all of a sudden we're saying that this could mean something else, which no serious Muslim Arab scholar is suggesting. Is just something that some Western Muslims are suggesting. It's funny because the ones that are suggesting that this doesn't mean hit are actually non-Arab speakers. All the Arab speaking scholars suggesting that this means hit. But no, you're taking it out of context. But with these people, there's no way to win. What I say to them is that even if this meant something else, given that for 14 fucking 100 years, so many people got this wrong, you could at least please admit that your God sucks at communication. If this verse didn't mean hit, and God used a verb, by the way, that argument is bullshit. But in the context and the form that verb is used when it says beating your wife, is clearly, anybody that knows their Arabic, they know that this word clearly means hitting your wife. But even if it didn't, that means God, from all the verbs that he could have used, he decided to use a verb that is easily mistaken with hit. And so many women had to suffer for it. So if he didn't want you to hit your wife and he used those words, the best I could say about your God is that he fucking sucks at communicating. But Beach, by letter verses, you mean the like Aleph Lam Meme? So I think what is your take on the letter verses? I think you mean by the ones that make no sense. Yeah, like Aleph Lam Meme. I have no idea, and I think nobody has any idea. It's very weird. Some people think they're secret codes for something in the Quran. Some person said that they are Islamic version of what the fuck. I don't know. Honestly, nobody knows, and I don't even know if there are theories on these. Maybe, honestly, I don't know. They're really weird. They're just random letters that doesn't mean anything in the Quran. Just start with something. Armin, what do you think about the conspiracy theories and so-called war on Islam? It's always the other's fault. I don't know. What do you mean by conspiracy theories? The war on Islam. There is a war on Islam. I'm fighting a war against Islam. That's not a conspiracy. I'm fighting. There is a war on Islam, and I hope I'm part of it. Let me see some Facebook questions. I'm just gonna do 2 more questions. Oh, one person is asking, do you pay taxes when you receive donations or make money from your sponsors? So on Atheist Republic, the reason why we haven't had to pay taxes yet is because our costs is greater than the donations that we're getting. So I hope one day we have to start paying taxes, because if we have to pay taxes, that means finally our donations have caught up with our costs. But so far, the cost of maintaining Atheist Republic and the people that we pay for the social media and the web development and all the software that we use to do what we do, and hosting the website, all the costs of that so far has been greater than our the donations. So that's because of that we haven't had to pay taxes. So I hope one day we have to pay taxes, because that means that finally, right now, because the donations haven't gotten to that point yet, I actually have to pay a lot out of pocket for a lot of the costs. But if at some point we pay taxes, I would be really happy that we have to do that, because that means that finally we could afford all the costs based on the donations. So what's the other question? Do you like tacos? Yeah, of course. Who doesn't? Let me do one more question. What do you think? All right, so this is the last question. And thank you so much for everybody sending all the questions. And let me know if you want me to do this more. I kind of enjoy doing these live streams. Tell me if you think it's a good idea. What do you think? Also, before I answer the last question, I do want to encourage anybody that is listening to this to go on atheistrepublic.com and leave a voicemail. Any opinions you have, any questions you have, any concerns that you have about your part of the world, about Islam, about Christianity, about Hinduism, about Jehovah's Witness, about atheism, about secularism, any of these topics, go on atheistrepublic.com. There's a green button. You leave a voicemail. Our podcast, it goes on our podcast. Our podcast is called Atheist Republic Voicemails. You can listen to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or any other podcast apps that are out there. And it's a great podcast. Basically, if you want to get a sense of views and opinions from atheists all around the world, it's just a podcast that is voicemail after voicemail, and it gets very interesting. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's sad, sometimes it's makes you angry, makes you happy. It's very interesting. And it gives you a really good understanding of how what different atheists from different corners of the world are thinking about and what they're saying, right? And basically, it's a way to democratize atheist activism, make it easy for people to anonymously give. Basically, we're giving the whole Atheist Republic audience to whoever wants that has anything to say. And if you could leave a voicemail anonymously, or if you want to plug something at the end of your voicemail, you could leave an opinion. Also, at the end of it, mention your YouTube channel, your Twitter, your show, your podcast. You could do that at the end as well if you like. And it goes to on the Atheist Republic podcast. Basically, we're making podcasts now. Anybody could become a host on the Atheist Republic podcast. This is a podcast with no host. Basically, everybody gets to be a host, as long as you have any, something to say that is worth hearing. And yeah, we're just making the barriers for activism very low, right? So there's not that much. This way, anybody could be. Now anybody has a voice. Anybody from anywhere around the world, from Bangladesh, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, Philippines, Morocco, anywhere that they could go on atheistrepublic.com, click the green button, record their voice, and it goes on our podcast. And even if you want to leave a support message for other atheists around the world, because a lot of atheists from other places in the world are listening to it. If you want to just give them a message of hope or support, to tell them that you're here, and they're not alone, and you support them, it's just a good way to. Beach listens to them, and he says he enjoys them. Thank you so much, Beach. Anyway, so what was the last question? Oh, so before I go to the last question, somebody's clarifying what he meant about the conspiracy. I meant Muslims are always delusional about the greatness of Islam history, and their failure is always because of universal war. Okay, universal conspiracy against them to never achieve Islam. Okay, so yeah. I mean, it seems like everything for a lot, not for all of them, but for a lot of them, it seems that everything is other people's fault. And again, a lot of Muslims have different opinions about why Islam has failed and why they're not the great empire they used to be. And the difference is huge between Sunnis and Shias, because after Muhammad died, Islam grew really fast and it became very powerful. But that was Sunni Islam. Shia Islam's did not. Shia Islam's, their Imam Hussein was killed in the most brutal way, and they were crushed. So because of the history that they experienced, Sunnis and Shias had a different theology to go with it as well. So Sunnis, because they became very powerful, they saw that their success is a sign that God is on their side. And Shias, on the other hand, had a different way of looking at things, and they argued that whoever whoever that is being attacked, whoever is the victim, whoever is that is being oppressed, those are the people that God is on their side, right? So the Sunnis, because they won, they said you could see God, you know who's God is on whose side based on whoever is becoming, whoever is dominating. And Shia said you could see God is on the side of the oppressed and the and the people that are being wronged, right? And this was completely flipped on its head in recent history when the Ottoman Empire collapsed and the Sunnis didn't have a state anymore. So there was no Islamic empire anymore, and Sunnis were like, "What the fuck just happened?" So they had to reflect on why this is happening. So, and different Sunnis came up with different reasons. Some Sunnis think like that we should modernize, we should learn from the West. Some Sunnis said like, no, because we have moved away from true Islam, and this is why we're failing. We used to be powerful because we were practicing true Islam, so we have to go back to closer to Islam. So the Sunnis, they had this whole, they have been trying to figure this out for the past years, and different people in the Sunni world have come up with different answers. The Shias also had to completely revisit this narrative as well, because the 1979 Islamic Revolution in Iran happened, and now we had the Shia government in power. And a lot of Shias are like, wait, I thought we were supposed to be oppressed, and we were not supposed to have a government until Imam Mahdi, the 12th Imam, comes. So how are we going to now justify being in power? Now we're government. So they had the exact opposite problem, because they were not, they're in power right now, but God, so they came up with this argument that it's okay to be in power. This is a new branch of Shiism, which a lot of people call Khomeinism. Not branch, it's called I don't know if you could call it a branch, but it's basically this whole idea of Vilayat al-Faqih came, and Khomeini kind of borrowed some ideas from Sunni Islam, and he didn't like some things about Shia Islam, to be honest, Khomeini. And he also, Vilayat Faqih is basically God's representative on earth until Mahdi comes. Basically, they're keeping Mahdi, the 12 Imams government for him in place until he comes back. So they came up with an excuse for it. They could, when you can explain things with magic, you're very flexible, right? So that's, again, different people have different answers to these questions. But now that I understand your question, it's a good question. But again, it depends on which Muslims you're talking to about. So the last question that I was going to answer: what do you think will ex-Muslim movement look like into third or fourth generation? I don't know. That's a very good question. I think it's growing. I think the atheist movement, and especially the ex-Muslim movement, is the next civil rights movement of our time. And I think, it's hard for me to say this, because it seems a lot of people are competing in this oppression Olympics, and everybody wants to say like, oh, we're the most oppressed, we're the most oppressed. So when we point to the fact that atheists are actually one of the most oppressed minorities in the world, especially ex-Muslims, it seems like we're kind of participating in this oppression of Olympics. But honestly, if you are a victim, I mean, I don't have a problem with Christians pointing out that they're being victims in Egypt. If they're, that's true Christian oppression. Or when Muslims claim that they're being oppressed in Burma, that's real, okay? But not when Christians are claimed to be oppressed in the United States. That's bullshit, okay? But there's real claims of oppression, and you don't have to be the worst for your cause to be worth paying attention to. And I think this in 13 countries in the world, being an ex-Muslim is punishable by death. I mean, what other group of people have that? And atheism in general, just speaking fighting, oppressing atheism is just even in Malaysia, which is is one of the most modern and apparently moderate Muslim countries in the world. You just recently had the deputy minister saying that atheism is unconstitutional, and they before that they said they need to hunt down atheists. And Malaysia is a country that people point to as one of the most moderate and advanced, modern Islamic countries in the world. So if this is what best we could hope for when it comes to ex-Muslims in Muslim countries, I mean, nobody says that. No government says that about any other minority. I mean, imagine if Trump came out and said, we need to hunt down every Muslim in the United States. Imagine the reaction to that. No, even the worst government in the world, like some of the worst governments in the world, imagine like Saudi Arabia and Iran. They don't say something like this about Christians and Jews. There are Christians and Jews are oppressed in Iran and Saudi Arabia, but not to the point where the government comes out and says Christianity is unconstitutional, or the government of Iran would never say something like that, or that we need to hunt down every Jew in Iran. That would never happen. So, or in Saudi Arabia. So, as bad as these governments are, the fact that you can't say that about Jews and Christians even in these countries show how badly atheists have that, because they don't have a problem saying that about atheists. Not only they don't have a problem saying that about atheists, Malaysia doesn't have a problem saying that about atheists. And these people that said these things, they still have their job. If they said that about atheists, if they said that about Christians or Jews, they wouldn't have a job right now. This would be an international news if they said that about Jews. Imagine if the minister in Malaysia or any other countries came out and said, we need to hunt down all the Jews in the country. Imagine the international reaction to that. But you can say that about atheists, and there was some coverage of it, but not much. But yeah, I think this is I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm hoping, and the numbers, even compared to last year, the ex-Muslim movement has grown so much. I mean, I've never seen so many people come out on social media and openly declare that they're ex-Muslim compared to last year. In 1 year, I'm seeing so much difference. So many people compared to last year. And if this is the change we're getting in 1 year, I can't even imagine what it's going to be like in 10 years from now. I'm skeptical. I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm not sure, but the thing is, Islam is still the fastest growing religion out there. So I'm a little bit also depressed about that, but also a little bit optimistic, given that how many people seem to be okay with coming out and declaring that they left. I mean, if this many people are openly declaring it, I can't imagine how many people are secretly thinking like that without saying it. So we'll see. I don't know what's going to happen in third and fourth generation, but it does seem to. It seems like it's growing, and I do think it is the movement. It is the next civil rights movement of our time. It was, I mean, we saw the black rights movements and with Martin Luther King in the United States, and the gay rights movement, and I think, and I'm hoping that we're the next big wave that is coming. So you say personally you don't think Islam is worse than atheism, but I can understand where you're coming from. Well, thank you for saying that. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm right. I mean, I might be completely wrong about this, right? A lot of people say they disagree with me, but to say you shouldn't compare it or you can't compare it, I think that's ridiculous. But to say that they disagree, I completely get that, okay? And we could have a discussion about that. And even if I'm wrong, I think having a discussion for why I'm wrong gives both sides of a discussion a lot of things to think about, even if we don't change our opinions of it. I think that comparison makes us think about, because a lot of the times when people talk about, when I compare it, and then I tell them why I think Islam is worse than atheism, it forces them to look at the world in a more, the Islam in a more global way, because a lot of people, when they think about Islam, they only think about the cost of Islam to Westerners. But when then I explain the cost of Islam, then they have a more global perspective. And I think even if they don't change their mind, it helps us not be so much focused on the West, because the victims of Islam are mostly, it's not about just terrorist attacks, okay? Islam fucks up with people's lives in much more ways than suicide bombs in Europe and the United States, okay? There's this, Islam fucks with people's lives in many different ways. And even if after explaining that they disagree with me, I do think this comparison does give people a more global understanding of where I'm coming from. And saying I disagree with you is much better than saying to me that you should not compare it, because I don't see why we shouldn't compare it. What's your best guess on, I know I said this is the last question, but I'm just going to take one more from Sydney. What's your best guess on the current number of ex-Muslims in the world? I'm not going to even try. Sorry, I don't know. But it's in the I don't know. I'm not even going to try. But I think I just know. I can tell that it's probably growing astronomically. Because think about it like this. A lot of people think that Islamic countries are too religious for us to even suggest people atheism or doubt. And I tell them, no, actually, there's more chances, there's more success rate in these countries than in Western countries. Because in a country that you have reached atheism to 10 or 12%, getting that to 14% is very difficult. But in a country that you're still at 2 or 5%, getting that to 10% is much easier. Because when you're at 2 or 5%, a lot of people that are not yet atheists are not atheists because they never even considered it. There are a lot of people there. If you're at 2%, that means there's a lot of people that as soon as you explain this to them, they were like, of course. I think getting from 2 to 10 is much easier than getting from 10 to 12. The first two people in my life in Iran that I told, this was in Tehran University, I told them why I don't believe in God anymore. Within weeks, they were skeptical about their own beliefs. And that's why I think in these countries, you have more opportunity of growth, not less. So don't give up on these countries. Anyways, thank you, everybody. This was fun. Tell me if I should do this more or less often. But I enjoyed it, so I might actually do it better. You guys like it or not? Anyways, thank you for your questions. And also, please comment if you're watching the video of this on YouTube. Please leave a comment with your questions, because next time I'm going to look at Facebook, I'm going to look at live chat, but I'm going to also look at the comments from the last live chat to come up with questions for the next one. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please comment and with some questions so I can bring them up in the next live chat and live discussion. Do more. Thank you guys and for saying do more. Yeah, okay. I will do. Thank you. This is nice. Thank you for people in the live chat. Okay, I see one more question, but I'm gonna keep it for the next live chat. Okay, sorry if I'm not getting it. I have to cut it somewhere because it could go all night. But I'm gonna keep that question for the next discussion. I'm gonna save it somewhere. Anyways, bye guys.